And welcome back to Cigar Time, your friendly neighborhood TV show all about premium cigars.
You hear they fired Doc?
Doc, what's his name?
Doc Rivers.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's Joan Rivers' son.
I don't know. You have to ask her. Oh, she's dead. Wait.
She's dead.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
and now he might as well be.
Yeah. Well, just get.
Still got 2 years on his contract.
Oh, he's still getting paid then.
A year.
So he can sit home and do nothing.
Anybody know his real name?
Glenn?
Yeah, I think so.
No,
At least that's what I was thinking.
That's
Somebody
what
said it yesterday. I'm like, they fired Glenn. I'm like, who's Glenn?
Who's Glenn?
They said I refuse to call him Doc.
I don't care.
Then why'd you bring it up?
I don't. You did.
You just don't
Didn't.
like basketball.
I didn't.
I don't like basketball.
Funniest thing you ever said was
I don't know.
thinking about moving to Pittsburgh just because they don't have a basketball team.
That's true.
That's how much I hate basketball.
I did say that.
That was one of the funniest things I ever heard.
I did
Wasn't
say
that
that.
one of the reasons that Pittsburgh periodically gets voted as the most livable city in America? Because they don't have a basketball team?
Could be.
Pittsburgh's great, man.
It's a
great
nice
town.
city. It is a nice city, man.
Great. I don't understand how Pittsburgh has so many fantastic, like, big name cigar stores, but Philadelphia doesn't.
I don't know. That's a good question. There's one in Philadelphia, in the city.
Right.
One big name.
We have Holtz,
One big
but
name.
they've got Blend, Burns,
Blooms.
Blooms, Leaf and Bean.
Leaf and
I mean,
Bean,
there's a
yeah.
lot of cigar stores, very nice cigar stores, but I'm talking about, like, big
Yeah.
name.
Major players.
Like nationally known.
Yeah, and I heard there's another one opening up in Pittsburgh. Actually, I think it's a CI, I think, is opening in Pittsburgh.
And Bloom is actually also a wholesaler for the whole Pittsburgh region for almost every brand of cigars you can name.
Bloom is?
Yep.
Is that the one that used to be Poor Richards?
No, I don't think
No.
so, no.
What used to be Poor Richards?
I thought Clafters was the wholesaler
Well,
out there.
Bloom is bigger, but
Bigger
in,
than...
but in a narrower geography. So Clafters covers much more territory.
Clafters have a ton of stores.
They have stores. They have like 12 stores or
But
something.
within
This is great information
the
for all of
Pittsburgh
viewers in Pittsburgh.
area,
That's right, yeah.
Bloom's almost.
Really? I didn't know that they were a
almost anything
wholesaler.
You want to buy?
I
They
didn't-
wholesale.
I didn't know that.
Pittsburgh, with only 3 teams, has won more championships since I've been alive.
That's true. It's because the Steelers were really good. And the Penguins.
Pirates have won a couple.
Pirates, well,
Not in a
70,
while.
79.
Against the
Can we
Orioles.
light our cigars yet?
Yes.
We are a family.
Today we are smoking
Phil
Brand new.
That's his name.
What?
Phil Garner. That's his name. I was trying to think of it the other day.
Okay. We are smoking the West Tampa Red. Brand new cigar just came out by Ricky Rodriguez. This is his, what, 4th cigar?
Yep.
Since he's in
about a year.
just over a year, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Every one of them has been a home run.
I think the Attic series is the best so
would-
far.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The Attic series is phenomenal.
I'd love to know what his, I don't know what to say, what his deal was, or, because he's been gone from General for a year.
A year, yeah.
How do you have 4 cigars on the market in a year? It takes how many years to,
Right.
what? I mean, it takes
It takes at least a
heck,
year
It
to-
takes 4 years for the tobacco to be ready for anything.
It takes a
At least
year
for
to
O'Hara.
come out with a blend, yeah? About
Yeah.
a year.
But
that's assuming all the tobacco's ready.
well, and he's not vertically integrated, so he would buy tobacco that
It's
was
already
ready,
ready, yeah.
at least initially.
I get, maybe. I mean, who's
Where-
making these for him?
Where does he get his tobacco? Is it Placencia? Is it Oliva? Is it...
Both.
I couldn't
Both?
tell you.
It could be.
It could be that he's just buying whatever he thinks he needs from whoever's got what he wants at the best price.
And then you think he
I don't
he
think so.
ferments it? He doesn't have a factory or anything, right? So...
He doesn't have, certainly doesn't have a leaf processing operation.
Right.
So I doubt he does additional fermentation. He's probably buying ready-to-use tobacco. If he is doing additional fermentation, he's probably doing that through Placencia, since they have the biggest processing operation in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it just makes you think. Like, I mean, He left General, and 3 months later, he's got a cigar on the market.
Yeah.
Well, hold on a minute.
It might also be that these are blends that he was thinking about before he left.
Yeah.
So execution could happen much quicker once he's out the door.
Correct, and it goes back to the agreement because a lot of big companies have.
Yeah.
You think of something while you're on their payroll, it belongs
Non-compete.
to them.
He only
Yeah.
thought of it when he was at home.
Oh.
He stopped thinking about it when he got to
Still,
work.
depending upon the contract, that's still proprietary
No.
information.
No. I wonder, he guess he has no non-compete, didn't have a non-compete clause. That's crazy. You would think he would.
Probably was under contract. The contract just ended.
Yeah, that's,
Then they fell from underneath everything.
yeah.
Who knows? But
And
again, all
non-competes are virtually impossible to enforce.
that's true.
If you want to play hardball, non-competes don't fly.
Yes, especially it's something like this. I mean, if you're in technology, I think,
That's different.
yeah.
And actually, the federal government has made it a little weaker on the non-compete.
Okay. We should mic Mike up. We used to remember the what was that called? The
Unknown smoke,
the unknown smoker or something like that.
like the unknown comic.
Yeah. But we didn't put a bag over your head.
Smoke would have
He did that all on his own. No, that was 10 years ago, man. Holy
That's
crap!
amazing.
It is.
So the blend on this
was 12
cigar,
years.
it's interesting to me.
10.
It is the same
December 10th.
San Andres Maduro that he used on the Attic series. So the wrapper is the same, but the flavor profile, I think you'll find, is very different.
Can't be. 90% of the flavor comes from
Oh,
the
stop it!
Right.
Stop.
So the flavor profile is very different. The filler and binder are all Nicaraguan, and although he won't say which
Which
there's
Nicaragua?
four different regions of Nicaragua and different breeds of tobacco in that blend, but it's all Nicaraguan.
I think this is what, my third one of these.
Here's my shot.
It might, I forget, because we just got them in. We just put them out last week, beginning or the end of last week.
Yeah,
something like that.
I did my usual first 30-second deal.
Yeah,
As soon as
Yeah.
we open the box,
Yeah.
take a picture, write a review, smoke away.
yeah.
It definitely
Or
does.
not in that order.
It does
Generally
taste
smoke
Nicaraguan.
before I write a review.
It
I was
does
just
taste
gonna say.
Nicaraguan to me.
Does it?
Yeah.
I'm getting a blast of pepper.
Well, maybe I cut that part of my tongue off. Because I haven't got. Because you guys were
Why don't you
raving
finish
about
the job?
pepper.
Dude,
Do the whole
stop
thing.
biting your tongue.
Because you guys were raving about the pepper from the. Was it the? What did we review last week? The Pepin Garcia.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
And I'm like,
Well,
I
that did-
That wasn't peppery at all.
No, that
You
one
thought
wasn't
it
peppery.
was.
No, it didn't. No.
No, he
Whatever.
didn't think it, we all thought that in the beginning it was one thing, and then pepper kicked in.
right.
Where I got a little bit of pepper, but then it kicked in more.
Yeah, because my tongue got really numb. So
I don't find this to be super peppery.
no, it's not
so
super
far.
pepper. I do get
Get
pepper.
some?
Yeah.
Maybe some white pepper.
No, this is definitely a black pepper.
I get
I'm getting
almost a caramel kind of note from this.
It's like when a cook's making a meal and he accidentally hits the pepper shaker and
Is that what it is?
oops, sorry, that's about it.
I'm actually getting almost like a wine taste to
I
it.
get that too. Wow, wow.
Well, not winey.
That a little bit of bready,
What?
like dough.
Yeah. It's funny because I get the wine taste from this, and also I get it, as you know, I talk to you about it all the time, from the Immortal Coil. That is a very distinct wine taste in that, and maybe they do the
that's a
same.
Rick Rodriguez
It's a Rick Rodriguez
creation.
thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
Vince, maybe that's why it's a red label.
Maybe it's red wine. Yeah, could be.
Maybe use it as a Bethune.
Maybe.
It might be in the Bethune.
Could be.
Interesting. I find this
Did
to
you just
be.
call Rick a buffoon?
No.
Where do you put this on the strength meter so far?
So far, 2.5. Right, dead smack in the middle so far.
I would say 2.5, somewhere around there.
Right. I mean,
We're about the same.
yeah, me too. I think it's already a more easygoing cigar than, say, the Attic Series or even the West Tampa Black. This is kind of mellow.
Okay. Through the retrohale, not so much though.
I didn't do that yet.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Let me know when you're going to do that so I can move
I just did.
before you sneeze.
I just did it.
Okay.
It must be very mild then. He didn't see
You didn't sneeze, exactly right.
There's no pepper, that's why. I didn't sprinkle any in.
Oh, I got a lot of nuts on the retro.
I was.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I was thinking that.
Yeah.
Moose was thinking something completely different. I can tell by his little snort. All right, so I know Moose and Paul are dying to hear my story.
Oh,
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Scott has
yeah.
his story.
about
Very-
what?
Is it a cigar smoking experience? An
experience
experience while
while
smoking
smoking.
a cigar? Experience while smoking a cigar, and it's as fresh as yesterday.
Uh-oh.
So I'm sitting out back last night.
At home or at the store?
At home. I'm smoking. It's actually a new cigar, the new Aliante from. I think that's how you pronounce it. From Illusion.
Okay.
And so I'm just sitting there. I was reading too, so I'm minding my own business, and I have my feet up. I've got those picnic benches. I've got a short one, and I've got my feet up on it, a pillow, so it doesn't hurt the bottoms of my legs. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and this about this big, this little black and silver bird flies over and lands on the bench. I'm like, holy. Look how I've never seen a bird or any animal whatsoever that from the wild get that close to me. And it jumps up on my leg. The bird, this little tiny bird, actually jumps up on my leg, and it actually started pecking my leg. And I'm like, whoa! So I'm like real.
It was looking for worms in there.
Yeah.
So I'm moving real slow as I want to get my camera. I know he's going to take off, or she is going to take off before I get to it. But yeah, it was there for about 10 seconds, and then just kind of flew off.
He thought it was a forest.
I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder maybe it doesn't know that there's somebody here. Like it didn't, like I don't know, it flew and didn't notice. But have you ever heard of besides like Snow White? I mean, and
Yeah, they were on your shoulders, and a chipmunk
and
came
Steve
up.
Carell in that movie. But yeah, I'm just sitting there. This little bird jumped on my leg. I'm like, what's going on?
I was expecting a joke to come out.
Yeah, me too.
I was expecting.
No, not
And
at
then the
all.
bird said to me and said, "Hey, what you smoking?"
That's next.
That would actually be great.
That would be funny.
Anyway,
And then I want to find out
It
what you really
it
smoking.
just had some blueberries.
Yeah.
Birds get drunk off of that.
oh really?
Yeah, birds get drunk off of that. So the thing had some blueberries before it found you. It was out drinking.
It would have been funny if it started pecking your cigar, though.
Yeah,
would've
but
been
it did. It's a couple pecks at my leg. I'm like, all right. Anyway,
Were you like totally still?
yeah.
It probably didn't know you were a person.
That's what I'm guessing. But it looked like a black finch. By looking at the bird, I would think it would be yellow, the shape of it and everything. And I'm no ornithologist. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. You heard it here.
He used a word.
Did that hurt?
Prepped all night for this.
I'm done.
Yeah, really.
No, actually, I'm done for the day. That's it. I got. All right, Rob, you tell yours.
I don't have one like that. I do have a squirrel. I sit in the back on my back patio, and squirrels come up all the time.
Because I think you're nuts.
Yeah,
No, they think you're a garden gnome.
could be.
And I tend to. No.
Thank you. I'm not that short.
I wasn't even thinking short.
Ah, thanks.
That's
No, the
even
squirrels,
worse,
the
actually.
squirrels come up, but that's because Wendy throws out, food all the time. I guess they're just looking for it. I'm like, I got no food for you, squirrel. Actually, I call it Rocky.
Well, that's
From
appropriate.
Rocky and Bull.
Rocky and Bullwinkle. Squirrel.
Why do you answer me? Why
I don't know.
do you answer me?
I don't know. 20 years, I don't know. I still answer stupid questions.
Here's your sign.
Yeah. So. All right, Moose, give your first impression there, sir.
Hasn't changed much. It's pepper's backed off quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to pick up that wine flavor too.
Oh, yeah.
now. But I haven't got the nuts taste yet.
Okay.
Did you retro yet?
No,
He doesn't retro.
I don't retro.
Oh, one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those.
I'm sorry, I don't want to sneeze all over the place.
Thank you for that.
Paul?
Well, I'm just getting these 4 things in a very nice balance, and the 4 things are caramel, nuts, very light pepper, and wine. And those 4 things are just there. They seem to be moving up and down relative to each other, but the overall feeling is really well balanced.
I did get something caramelly
Scott.
at first, but it's gone. No pepper whatsoever for me, at least. Definitely the nutty, Paul, and I guess it's kind of like probably like a Bordeaux 2003. Late bottle vintage, by the way.
I like whiskey beer.
So,
I think, Paul, you nailed it right on the head. It's balanced because nothing isn't dominating the taste. It's just all right there.
It's very smooth.
And it's
yeah.
working
Yeah.
together. It's not
Yeah.
muddy
I agree.
or confused. It's what?
said I agree.
It's balanced.
Very
in the cigar.
balanced.
It's this is a testament. This is a testament to Rick's talent.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Not just that it tastes really good, but how well balanced it is really the result of good blending.
We keep talking about Ricky, and Ricky was the master blender for CAO.
For 25 years.
Was it 25 years?
Yeah.
And he was came under the tutelage of Benji Menendez.
Yeah, I
who
was just thinking that. Yeah.
he's a legend from
Yes.
in the industry and a legend from Cuba. And I won't tell the story because I'm not going to get it right or do it justice. But Ricky's story about how he became he's the first and possibly only trained master blender in the industry. And I guess the rest of the master blenders just kind of become that, but they specifically, for whatever reason, they chose him and they trained him as a master blender. And as far as I know, I think last time I talked to him about it, he was the only one in the industry.
Usually people grow up in the industry and ones that have some talent for blending do it and they
Right.
keep doing it and they get better and better at it.
Right.
But there isn't within the industry an ongoing system for training blenders. And because he was under the tutelage of such good people,
Yeah.
he got concrete formal training in blending like no one else ever
Well,
did.
Yeah.
he also had Ernie to work with,
Yeah, he worked with them. Yeah.
Laura Tilley.
Yeah. Actually, she's
that's a plus.
She's coming here tomorrow. Laura will be here tomorrow.
Oh, is Johnny been here? Colombo?
I think she's coming in. It says a lot for his talent that he can go buy tobacco and know exactly what it's going to taste like when he puts it together. That's an incredible talent.
That is the blender's art,
Yes.
is knowing how tobaccos are going to work together.
Right. And he had nothing to
He
Like
couldn't
when we say-
create the tobacco to his own taste. He had to find
hit a
it
fight,
and buy
right?
it.
Exactly. And knowing what's going to be good together is an art, and not many people have it. And he absolutely does.
I was watching, it could have been Hand Rolled, the Pete Johnson movie. I was watching it the other night, and they commented about once you become a master blender, it's almost like they're so good at it, second nature. You just know. You know, and I've seen some people, I don't know if they're considered a master, but like Henderson from Ventura Cigars. Or
He's too young.
What's that?
He's too young.
Yeah, but he said
be a master
he
blender.
said, Scott, okay, what would you want? When I was down there, what would you like from a cigar? And I said, I want this and da. He goes, okay. Or he grabbed a couple things together, and it was exactly.
And it delivered exactly
It was exactly what I had said.
How much fun is that?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Did you do you were blending too, didn't you?
I did a lot of blending for my own stuff, but I also did a little bit of consulting blending to other companies that were creating.
Was any of it any good?
The Tempest, the original Tempest, you
think
did,
I'd
didn't
pick
you?
on you?
I worked on the original Tempest when it first came out.
For
Alec Bradley.
Oh, no
Well,
kidding.
but I didn't do it for Alec Bradley. I did it for Raices. I was there working with them on some other stuff. They were buying some wrapper from me. I was getting some filler from them. And they were working on this project and said, do you want to get involved? And I said, sure. And we worked on that blend.
By the way, I'm getting a little bit of pepper now.
Okay.
Okay, so your taste buds haven't completely died.
What?
I said now his taste buds haven't completely died.
Oh. So, Paul, do you have any words of wisdom for us?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit. I didn't want to get too deep into it, but I wanted to talk a little bit
No, go deep.
about
Hey, we got plenty of time.
one of the major tobacco producing countries that we all know some tobacco from there, but we don't think of it as a major producer, and we don't know much about it, or the general smoking public doesn't know much about it. What I'm talking about is Indonesia, which encompasses places like Java and Sumatra and thousands of other little islands that each have their own terroir, so to speak.
Ornithologist was still more impressive.
It's got an interesting history. Tobacco in Indonesia, there are disputes about how it got started. Some people say that Spanish colonists to the Philippines brought tobacco from Mexico, believe it or not. And as they were colonizing the Philippines, the tobacco sort of culturally drifted over into Indonesia. That's one theory. Another theory is that the Dutch settlers, who are famous for planting all kinds of new seeds in all kinds of new places. I mean, that's what they did all over the world in the 1500s. And that's what they did in Indonesia in the 1500s. They brought tobacco seed there and started planting. Indonesian tobacco is unusual for a couple of reasons, and most of it has to do with the nature of Indonesia. For one thing, they have a much more intense dry season, wet season difference than most countries that grow tobacco. So the dry season is desert-like, and the wet season is monsoons and floods. So growing a crop like tobacco requires some careful planning.
Yeah.
And in fact, they categorize all of their tobacco, no matter what breed it is, in two categories. And I can't pronounce it in Indonesian, so
Wet
I'm not
and
going to.
dry.
Well, sort of. Basically, tobacco that's planted at the end of the wet season and harvested during the dry season. That's one whole category. Or tobacco that's planted during the dry season and harvested during the wet season. And that's like a completely different tobacco because the nature of the soil and water is so dramatically different. Then within those two broad categories, basically they have hundreds of breeds that are just particular to one island or another. We know Sumatra and Java best, but basically there are hundreds and hundreds of them. The whole industry, it became an industry by the end of the 1500s. It was big business for Indonesia to grow and export tobacco, which is a pretty early start if you think about it compared to a lot of other countries. But the Dutch were very industrious that way. The whole industry changed in the mid-1880s.
Here it does again. Yada, yada. Yada, yada, yada. For
Yada, yada.
300
300 years.
During that 300 years, they just did what they did. It didn't change much.
So they had a monopoly on it.
And
for 300 years.
all of a sudden, everything changed because a guy whose name I also can't pronounce came up with this really interesting idea of dicing up cloves and mixing them with tobacco and making cigarettes, which we now call Kretek cigars or Kretek cigarettes.
So we have him to blame?
I thought Kretek was a company.
It became.
It is.
There is a company called Kretek that makes that, and
Right.
they pretty much have a monopoly on it now. But back then,
Oh, I didn't know that was a.
it was a single guy who came up with this idea, and it took over smoking in Indonesia like that. And as a population, Indonesians smoke more than anybody else in the world.
So if we go back in time and take him out, it won't happen?
There will never be a closed cigarette.
Thank
this
God.
was just a one-man
Work on that.
invention.
I'll crank up the machine.
I hate that smell, man.
Believe
it's
it or
horrible.
not, they make over 5 billion Kretek cigarette/cigars a year in Indonesia. Over 5 billion of them.
Wow.
It is enormous. And it took over most of the tobacco. I mean, basically,
Yeah.
there was hardly anything else you could get but that, except some cigar tobacco. Now I'm going to jump ahead again about 100 years, because another tremendous change came, and I find this change to be very ironic. The primary breed of cigar tobacco that's grown in Indonesia is called TBN. And what it stands for is tobacco under cloth, shade grown. Back in the 1800s, shade grown happened because there was jungle and cover. And in the late 1800s, the people in Connecticut came up with Connecticut shade and the idea of using actual cloth covers over the fields as a way to compete with Indonesian wrapper. Because Indonesian wrapper was dominant in the world before Connecticut shade was invented. In the 1980s, Indonesia came up with this idea that they wanted to go turn around and compete more effectively with Connecticut shade. So they started growing tobacco under cloth for the first time. So so Connecticut shade was a copy of Indonesian TBN, and the new Indonesian TBN is a copy of Connecticut shade.
Interesting.
Which I think is all sort
Yeah.
of convoluted and fascinating.
Yeah.
That's it.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble.
Yeah, we're in serious
I
trouble.
mean, that was only 7 minutes.
I thought that was going to be a good chunk.
Geez, my story was 5 minutes.
But what I can tell you is Indonesian Sumatra, or what most people think of as Sumatra, has had a secondary life in places all over the world. For example, what is right now the single most used wrapper in the industry, and this has been true for over 20 years, is Ecuadorian Sumatra, which is actually a crossbreed between Indonesian Sumatra and African Cameroon.
Right.
But the leaf that results from that is so adaptable that it has become the most used wrapper in the industry.
Why is it so inexpensive?
Because they grow so much of it.
Really?
And the yields are excellent. Ecuadorian Sumatra, there's almost no waste at all. And that's really unusual in this industry.
That's the most used.
Wrapper, more than any other single one. In fact, if you looked, say you took out
That's
an...
not the same as Ecuador and Connecticut.
No, it's not.
How come I can name 3 cigars that have Sumatra wrapper? Wow.
I have a suggestion. Open up Cigar Aficionado, look at all of the ratings. What do they do, like 80 cigars per issue? And look at how many of them have an Ecuador Sumatra wrapper on them, and you'll be astounded.
I will be.
Yeah, I would be too.
It surprised me when I found this out. Gloriously, when I found it out, I was also in the business of growing Ecuador Sumatra, so
Well,
that was okay.
That helped out a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't mind that at all.
No.
I have a question for you. You were talking about the starting in the growing in the rains, the wet season, and harvesting. And if with wine, if they get serious rain when they're about to harvest it, like it messes up they suck up so much, the grapes expand, they dilute the sugars, and the grapes start to break. Does anything
No.
similar happen with tobacco?
No, and I'll tell you why. Grapes are a fruit, and tobacco is a leaf. And fruit responds to water very differently than the leaves do. For the leaves, it just carries nutrient, and when they're full, they're full.
Okay.
A fruit will just keep sucking stuff up until
Right.
it's dead, until it
It-
destroys
till
itself.
it explodes.
Yeah, it does. So it does. So the plant doesn't suck up as much water that quickly, and it doesn't dilute the nicotine or
and
sugars.
when they harvest in the wet season, they harvest as early in the wet season as they can.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it would suck being
Otherwise,
rained on all the time.
plants would come right out of the ground when they went to harvest it because the ground gets so wet. I mean, it's monsoon floods.
So do they do? Is that like they do primings or a
They do
version of
primings,
stalk
but
time?
they have to do it.
Stalk pulled.
No, they do stalk in the dry. When they harvest in the dry season, they cut the stalk because it's just a dusty mess when they're doing the harvesting.
I was again. I was watching a different show on wine, and I think they talked about the stress, like in the hard soil, the stress that it helps the vines. And you said that at one point you thought that
That's why
applies to tobacco as
Cuba-
well.
There is a school of thought, and there are people that will argue this, but there is a
Yeah.
concrete school of thought that poorer soil, not barren soil, but poorer soil, a more stressed environment that stresses the plant, actually causes it to produce more oil as a self-defense mechanism.
Isn't that why you said Cuban tobacco is
Yeah,
the way
because
it
a
is?
lot of the soil, when they and particularly when Columbus came to the Dominican Republic and they were growing tobacco there, it's a desert island. It was sandy and relatively dry, and not the kind of environment you would expect people to grow tobacco in. And yet there was tobacco, and it was very good. And part of that, they believe, is stress. Plants do all kinds. Plants are much more active than we usually think. And when a plant is stressed, it has all kinds of defense mechanisms. The one we care about is producing more oil, which reduces the amount of evaporation off the surface of the leaf, so it helps the plant retain water. That's why they produce oil.
So under that theory, you can grow tobacco anywhere.
Well, you can. That doesn't mean it's going to taste good. It still depends on getting the right nutrients in the right quantities, but if the plant has to work harder to get that, the same way that when we think we're going to starve, we get fatter because we're storing fat so we have nutrition later. Plants produce oil to keep in the water because they think a drought is coming.
Interesting. Science. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Blinded me with science.
I also thought one of the, like, again, there's some stories from the movie Hand Rolled, which, by the way, it's on the rainforest.com. I don't think I can promote them, so you know where the rainforest is? It's in the Amazon.
Yeah.
You can watch it on that if you're Prime. It's
It's on
actually,
Prime.
Yeah,
It's on Prime.
It's on
Yes.
Prime?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's fantastic, but they talked a lot of it was Cuba versus the United States, or not the U.S., but Nicaragua, Dominican,
Central America.
Central America. They didn't really talk much about they didn't talk about Ecuador at all, or Honduras a little bit. But one of the things I thought was interesting is that Castro actually was getting rid of a lot of the tobacco crops. They wanted to grow nothing but sugarcane. And that's another one of the reasons that a lot of, that Cuban cigars have faltered, because it takes a while to redo the soil. And is there any truth to that? With the sugar cane?
Well,
I mean, it must be because it was in the
I
movie.
know at the
Yes.
time of the Cuban Revolution, sugarcane was the biggest economic driver in Cuba, much more than tobacco at that time. I don't know when they shifted the focus back to tobacco agriculturally, but they have done that to the point that now the Cuban government will pay individuals that have a big backyard to grow cigar tobacco in their backyard.
Really?
Because they just don't have enough arable soil available anymore to produce as much tobacco as they want. So they're basically paying people to just plant it wherever. I don't know how much they pay them. I don't know if they ever actually get paid, but hypothetically they get
Yeah,
paid.
right. Do you think that, I guess, covertly Cuba imports tobacco?
Oh, shit. Please, can you hit that decline?
Hit the red button.
Is that a yes? That they do?
Thank you.
Ask
Especially-
that again, I got distracted.
Do you think that they covertly import tobacco, Cuba?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I
No.
think that they still value the idea that it's all Cuban, that it's a Cuban puro
Yeah,
every
but
time.
they can say it.
Yeah, I think
I
they
just-
value the idea, not just the ability to say so. I think they value that as a concept.
What are your thoughts on that argument that all the Cuban tobacco is the same and they just put different bands on it?
No, I
Nah.
You don't
totally
subscribe to
disagree.
that?
No, I do think, however, that within each of the major factories, most of what that factory makes is going to taste almost the same, even if they're different brands.
Okay.
But that's factory by factory.
But
not-
why would that be if they have different blends? Or are you just agreeing with Rob?
I'm agreeing with Rob, but factory by factory, not overall. So within a factory, most of what they make will be the same, and so you'll see a Monte 2 and what's the
Diplomatico.
well, yeah, that's a good example. A Monte 2 and a Diplomatico are almost very, very hard to distinguish if you smoke them blind, and they come out of the same factory, generally at the same time.
I've never heard. I have heard like they'll take like a Monte number 2. They'll make in several different factories, and you're gonna get different. Like they'll make some for certain markets out of the better factories, and like the Canadian market they'll make it in a different factory versus the Hong Kong market. You know, how true that is, I don't know.
I think in reality, there is a difference by market, but that's done at the quality control level later, not at the beginning in terms of which factory goes to what country.
I mean, I can distinguish between different brands of Cuban cigar. I mean, the Cohiba Siglo 6 tastes different than a Series D number 4 than a Diplomatico.
And those aren't made in the same factory.
Okay. So, well, I guess I'm addressing
So
more
it's
what
kind
Rob
of half.
said than.
It's kind of halfway between what Rob said and the opposite of that, in that the cigars generally are different than each other, but within each factory they're almost identical, and sometimes they are identical.
I know when I have one, they all taste the same at first, and I get a very distinct, like bar soap flavor every single time.
Really?
Yeah, it just reminds me of bar soap.
Ate a lot of soap when you were a kid, huh?
No, but
I've
as you should know, most olfactory are 10 senses, and your palate there's only 5. So, like, you ever smell like ivory soap?
Yes.
That's what the flavor reminds me of.
it's funny you say that. The word I use for that in my own head is waxy.
Yeah.
And I've experienced a lot of waxiness when you first light a lot of Cuban cigars. There are some other cigars that I think have that character also. Not that they taste Cuban at all, but have that waxy element.
I get that a lot.
And it's from the wrapper, and I think it has something to do with one kind of oil versus another kind of oil that the leaf produces. So some produce this oil that's almost flavorless, but it's thicker. So in a properly dried, finished cigar, it's almost like it has a little skin of wax on it.
Or actually does.
Well, there are some companies that do that too, but that's not what
That's different.
that's different.
Interesting.
Here's a good example of that. The Gran Habano No. 5, Corojos.
Right.
If you pick up any one of them and you look at it and rub your finger over it,
It's really oily.
It's not just oily, it's waxy. It's something thicker than oil.
Like the high test.
Almost solid, but not quite. And you can taste that every time you put that cigar in your mouth. You know,
We had a cigar,
I
the
know you
Rebel
don't
High
do that
Test.
very
We
often.
had
No,
a
I
cigar
don't.
that we had that we called the high test was like that.
Well, I think
That
that
was
had
something
some special additions to
yeah.
it
Oh, I don't.
that
I,
weren't
I, I
that
don't-
weren't Bethune.
I don't know. It was the most sheen I've ever seen on a cigar. Ever.
We don't have those cigars anymore. Although they were very, very popular.
Yes, they were.
We couldn't make them fast.
Couldn't make them fast enough. Exactly right.
What was the skew on those?
50-50.
Yeah, it's, okay. I do remember it then.
That's because Art said it's a 50-50 shot of living if you smoke a cigar.
Well, it was a high test cigar.
It was. That was a Hoyo de Nicaragua cigar.
What are you talking about?
Now that we don't have
What
them.
you talking about, Willis?
Yeah.
Polishing the apple.
Well, let's not forget
Let's stop
that
right
the
there.
literal meaning of Bethune is shoe polish.
Yeah.
This is a real. Oh, that's right.
That's funny. Scott, do we have any events coming up soon?
Yes. Funny you should mention it. I had some written down here.
Oh, did you? Nice.
Yes. This Saturday in Quakertown from 11 to 4, they're having a huge event with Forged. And they there's a bunch of stuff going on. They have a lot of external companies come in and highly organize it. She does
She
some
does a
pretty
great
neat
job,
things.
yeah.
Next Monday in Downingtown, they have the Manic Monday with My Father's Cigar Company. And then Thursday in Fraser, we're doing an event with Christoph, with Veronica. Veronica.
Ironically, that's who just called me.
Veronica.
Yeah, that's right. She's canceled two events so far here.
But I think weren't those events scheduled right at the trade show?
Huh? Say that again?
I think the events were scheduled during the trade show. I think that's why.
Oh. No, not the first one. The first one was supposed to be like last week or something. So, I don't know. Anyway.
No
So, yeah, there you
upcoming
go.
events here in Horse?
Not on the schedule.
We have two events. We have two events per month.
Yeah, but they might be before the 31st.
Could be.
Like one was you just had My Father.
We just
last
had
week.
my father last week, yeah. Well, no, because today's the 31st.
So it was a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks ago.
Right.
Guys, I think everybody knows we already taped the show and we're doing these guys live, so everybody knows it.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds right.
that's fine. So what else is going on? Any news about the
The industry?
the industry, legislative wise, or anything?
Nothing really interesting. I mean, the last thing I heard was the generational thing. I think we talked about that last week, where that really hasn't. I believe it was again Hawaii, Nevada, and California. It just didn't get any footing.
No traction.
No
That's
traction.
the
Thank you, Paul.
dumbest
Better
thing
word.
ever.
Yes, it is. Yeah, but every time you read anything from PCA or Half Wheel, it's all about different taxes were passed or denied or stuff like that, but nothing significant. I mean, we'll see what happens after the election. Any changes to the FDA? I mean, basically the deeming regulations have, for the most part, gone
away. Yeah.
But who knows? I'm sure Pennsylvania, they're going to try and add a tobacco tax again, which will fail,
Which will fail.
as it always does.
Yes. We have such a strong lobby against it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, being one of the few tobacco growing states, I assume it would be. So that would be horrible. And plus, so many. If we do get that, there's companies in online companies who would leave the state.
Yeah. Yeah, two of the biggest.
Two of the biggest, yeah. So yeah, they would just go to Florida.
Maybe three of the biggest. Holtz may move too.
Maybe. No, they won't move.
Why not? I mean, I'm sure their catalog business is way bigger than the retail.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I heard they're moving their.
I heard them move their warehouse.
And
Yeah.
their northeast store together somewhere else.
Yeah.
Not far.
Not yet.
Yeah, I heard it's like down the road or something.
Yeah.
But I think that it has. I'm not promoting them. I don't know why.
Stop. I like Southie.
No, but I think it had to do with. I thought I heard that the new place, they can have a liquor license or something to that effect is one of the reasons they're moving.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, a lot of liquor gets consumed at that store. Maybe not with a license and not for sale, but
Right.
consumption is high. So there was one other thing about Indonesia that I forgot to tell you. And this has nothing to do with tobacco, but I think you'll find it interesting. The capital of Indonesia, which is Jakarta, is sinking about a foot a year.
Really? That's significant.
That's dramatic. And it's not because of climate change, which is also really interesting. The reason that Jakarta is sinking is first of all, it's one of the most densely populated cities in the world. There's over 10 million people in a geography that's smaller than Brooklyn in New York.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really dense, and there's virtually even though it's a modern city, there's no water infrastructure for the general population. So people dig illegal wells in the middle of the city, all over the city, and what's happening is they're sucking out so much water from the water table that everything above it is just settling down.
So what would happen if they got a movement together, like they coordinated this whole thing at the exact same time, everybody jumped up?
Stop.
Would it go down further or faster?
Tip over.
Yeah, that's it.
While they're in the air, it'd be fine. As
But
soon as
it's
it
right-
all hit the ground, bang!
So they came
And
up
a foot a year?
And it would
a foot a year, and
create
so
a tsunami.
the president and
it's gonna
prime
be a lake.
minister of Indonesia, who is apparently very popular with the people, he's like a people's president, came up with a great idea.
Stop digging?
He's building a completely new capital that is not sitting on a water table from scratch. They're building a whole new city, which will be done in the next 3 years.
I heard that.
And they're just going to abandon Jakarta.
And they're going to make it the Venice of the South Pacific.
Yeah.
Well, just Jakarta, how industrial, and I mean, are we talking real live buildings, or are we talking huts?
No, we're talking a big Jakarta is
Oh,
a
yes,
big
You don't have
and
huts.
everything.
You don't have that many
Who's
people.
paying for all these buildings?
The government. They are building a new
They have too
city
much money
from
on their
scratch.
hands.
I guess there's a lot of
I
Indonesian
don't-
rapper getting.
I don't understand why they just don't do what the Romans did and build aqueducts.
Well,
Because Romans are stupid.
they could do all
Really?
kinds of stuff to move water around, but if they're taking it, no matter what they do with it afterward, if they're taking it from under the city's going to sink.
Well, no, they didn't. Rome didn't take it from under the city. They took it from the mountains, and they built aqueducts and brought it to the city. That's what they should do.
Well, but
It'd
now
probably
they-
be cheaper than
but-
building a whole new city.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it
Aqueducts.
would be cheaper,
They
but
have
now they get a
aqueducts in
brand new
California,
capital
too.
out of it.
Yeah.
Is that where all the Romans went? California?
No. They're smart enough not to go there.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Although they do have a Coliseum.
True. Let's go back to this cigar.
What would you guys?
I have a question about this.
Go ahead.
It's probably the one you were about to ask.
Go
now that
ahead.
I'm thinking about
Probably
it.
not, but go
What
ahead.
would you pair this?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Red wine.
Red wine.
Red wine.
Red wine. Actually, it wouldn't be bad with this. It's
No,
tastes
I
like
think
wine.
it would be very complimentary.
Moose, what would you pair with this?
A bourbon aged in wine barrel.
Any particular one that
No.
you have in mind?
No, nothing in particular.
Anything that's aged in a wine barrel. Okay.
Yeah.
A bourbon that's aged in a wine
Yep.
barrel. There are
Okay.
several of them.
There's several of them out there. I mean, that would be a good pairing with this.
Paul.
I was thinking in the opposite direction. Instead of complementing the wininess, I was thinking of goosing the pepper a little bit. So I would go with a rye, and I would go with a particularly peppery rye.
Anything in particular?
Actually, Jack Daniel's rye has a good amount of pepper in it, and I think that would complement this really nicely.
As much Jack Daniels as I've had, I have never had a rye.
Well,
I
their
actually
rye
didn't
is
know they made
relatively new.
Is it?
They get a whole line of new stuff. It's not just the regular, old number 7.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know there's Gentleman Jack and
Or
The
they
best.
got
That's the
honey
best
and-
Jack.
They got bottled and bond, and they got the cask strength. They've got
Yeah.
what's bottled and bond mean?
It follows a set of laws that were written in the late 1800s that has to do with... it
So
has
marketing
to-
bullshit.
No,
it's not. No,
it's
the
quality
actually-
control.
Actually, they bottle it, and it has to be sent to a federal warehouse, and it has to be aged at the proper time under federal eye. And when it's finally aged to the proper place, the federal government releases it back to the company.
So marketing.
It also
No,
has
it's not
to,
marketing. It's
It
federal
has to
government
be.
actually does it.
It can only be 100 proof.
It has to be exactly 100
Yep.
proof in the bottle. It also has to be one crop year of whatever grains are in it. They all have to be from the same year. And it all has to be distilled in 1 year, in the same
They
season.
And
started this.
what is all that? All those things you talked about makes it bonded. What's that
Well,
makes that so
the
special?
reason
What's
why
changing?
they started this is a lot of people were making
bathtub bourbon.
bathtub bourbon and bathtub whiskey, and people were getting sick, and literally going blind.
It's
the whole 9
regulations,
yards.
not marketing.
Other parts of it
So they
that
jumped
are,
in for health reasons. The government jumped in and says, okay, if you want to call yourself, bourbon, whiskey, whatever, because there's a lot of different companies that do it, you got to give it to us, and
we
we'll
have to check it.
and we have to check it and protect it and make sure that it's good for the public. So, that's how Bottled and Bond started.
Before that, people were doing things like adding flavorings to bourbons, like
So-
turpentine.
Okay, so Redemption Bourbon.
Yeah.
It's bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is it bonded?
no,
Unless
they-
it says so, it's not.
and only a bottle that's
Marketing.
yeah. Only nowadays it probably is, but back when they first started, it wasn't. If it says Bottled and Bond, it has to have been in a federal warehouse. It's the only way you can say Bottled and Bond.
That part
And
is
that,
marketing.
that law was actually drafted by and lobbied for by a nephew of a president, Zachary Taylor. And his nephew owned what was then the biggest distillery in America. His name was Colonel E.H. Taylor, and his brand is still around today. And his distillery became the Buffalo Trace Distillery, and it's still one of the premier whiskey producers in the world. But he drafted the Bottled and Bond Act and pushed it through Congress, specifically for quality control reasons, to keep unhealthy additives and flavorings out of it, so that you'd be able to say, this is pure, this is what it's supposed to be, and the government controls it so you can't get at it and mess with it after the fact.
So, not
So
marketing.
somewhat marketing and somewhat legit
Checked out
quality
like 2
control.
minutes ago. That's
Why
for
did
me.
they, where did they,
Okay.
where did
That's
they,
for me.
so why did they come up with 100 proof though? It was just a random
They
number.
got a number.
They had to have a number.
Better
That's
than
an
that.
easy
And
one to
originally
determine.
back then, when the law was first written, everything was 100 proof. They didn't water it down.
Interesting.
Or they watered it down too much to make it cheaper,
Ah, darn it.
and that would ruin things too.
That's true. I like the cask strength though.
Yeah, it's
There
pretty
was a
sweet.
big controversy about 10 years ago with Jim Beam. who it turned out their proof numbers on everything other than their bottled and bond products
Really?
were inaccurate because they were overwatering, because that makes it cheaper. But they weren't telling anybody, and they weren't reducing prices. They were just doing it.
It's strange that Jim Beam would do that. Isn't it the number one selling bourbon
world.
in the world?
Yep.
Or whiskey or whatever you want to call
The
it.
number
It is
one whiskey
bourbon. It's
in the world
Kentucky.
by a large margin. But they went through, this is before the bourbon boom, right before it started actually, but they did it because it's a publicly traded company and they needed to improve the bottom line, and the easiest way to do it was to add more water.
It's the cheapest way. All right, let's put some numbers on this cigar. Moose, and your final verdict.
Well, I no longer get the peppers, and I finally started figuring it out. You all were getting a nut flavor. Mm-hmm. I'm getting hazelnut,
Okay.
and I'm giving it a 9.
All right. Paul?
I think this might actually be my favorite West Tampa so far. I don't get any pepper. Pepper is just not part of this cigar in my estimation. The flavors remained consistent. They just notch up and down a little bit. But those flavors are damn near perfect to me. And I like that it's a relatively mellow cigar. It doesn't smack you in the face.
Right.
It's not overpowered. I give it a 9.5. I love this cigar.
Moose, what would you give it on the strength scale? Now that you smoked more of it.
2.25.
Okay. Paul?
2.
Okay.
2.5.
All right. What about your...
That's my rating.
That's right.
That's harsh.
I'm getting intermittent hits of pepper here and there. Not a lot. It's not like a Don Pepin. I'm just picking up, and maybe you saying that, Moose, but what I would describe as being nutmeg. But maybe it's hazelnut. My palate's not as fine-tuned, but I'd give this a 9. I like the cigar.
So you got a 9, you got a 9.5, you got a 9.
I give it a 9.
All right. I think the best thing that was said was by Paul, that it's a balanced cigar. It absolutely is. You're getting everything, but not too much of one and not too much of another, not too less of another.
No flavor pushes the other flavor out.
Right. It's very...
They just work together.
Exactly. I think it's tremendous. And, you got to take your hat off to Ricky, man.
Yep.
He really...
Yeah, this is a great
And his
cigar.
stuff is getting better and better. The first stuff he put out was rushed, maybe. And the Attic series, he took a little time.
I like the first. I thought the first two were really good.
I didn't say they weren't, but compared to these, I think, and now it's getting better.
Yeah, the natural wrap that he came out with
Yeah.
didn't do a damn thing for me.
Okay.
The Maduro, I thought that was pretty good because I like Maduros.
Yeah.
The Attic, I thought it was a much better tasting cigar
Yeah.
than the other two. And this one, I think, is his best shot.
I agree. I think this is the best one out of all of them, and I love the Attic series. I'm going to give this. I also think it's a 2 on the strength scale. I don't get it much at all. The pepper is really backed off, and now it's actually changed to like a white pepper, like you said earlier. I give this a 9.5 also. So I guess it averages out to 9.25. Yeah. So.
Rick said an interesting thing about
We
this
got to say
one.
it within the
I'll
next
say it
22
fast.
seconds.
Rick said that his other cigars and most of his career, he spent blending cigars that he thought people would like. He blended this cigar for himself.
Good.
This is what he likes.
Smoke 'em
All
if
right.
you got 'em.
Life's too short to smoke
yep.
cheap cigars.
Ciao for now, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Smoke
See you next
often and
week.
Smoke happy.